Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. So good to be on with you. Praise be to God. Hey, we are going to have a conversation about the turning point of our country. Is this a turning point after the murder of Charlie Kirk and after we paid him so many respects at his memorial? Is our country at a turning point? That's one of the biggest questions I have for our first guest, Nicholas Cavazos from the Traditional Thomist podcast. He's going to be on at 14 past the hour. But essentially, I have that same question, but for Europe and for the rest of the West. And that we're going to ask Dr. Hélène de Lauzun from the European Conservative. She's going to be on at 30 past the hour from France. I mean, France has gone through a lot of turmoil as of recently. More protests there, immigration out of control, demographic winter. So are we really at a turning point? We talk a good game of conservatism, but that conservatism comes without religion. At least it has so far in the UK. Is that true in the rest of Europe? And we're going to have that conversation today. So do join us for all of that today. Of course, there are other stories we may get into. We'll just see how it all goes. And we'll put links to everything in the show notes for you over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Plus, we have your opinion to account for, and you can weigh in on that conversation in the live video feed. When you go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT, you hit that watch live stream, and you will find the links just underneath where you can participate in the conversation, and we will read your opinion, take your questions in the after show and the live video feed after the radio program. All of that at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. Well, let's pray. We've got a lot to get to today, and I'd be grateful if you would share us with a friend. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and now your saint of the day.
Saint Pio of Pietrelcina, pray for us. Francesco Forgione was born to a pious Italian peasant family in the year of our Lord 1887. His father worked in the United States to pay for Pio's education and vocation. At the age of 15, Francesco became a Capuchin Franciscan friar, taking the name Pio in honor of Pope St. Pius V. 7 years later, he was ordained, and along with other disruptive health problems, he began to suffer the stigmata of our Lord, which in humiliation the young priest begged God to hide from view without removing the pain. A few years after Padre Pio's brief service in World War I, the stigmata became visible again, and remained so for the rest of Pio's life. The priest's reputation for holiness grew, and people flocked to his ever-open confessional, where he could read souls, or to obtain one of the many miracles he worked. Pio was deeply humiliated by the fame, and humbly accepted suppression by his superiors. But a few years later, Pope Pius XI lifted the ban on Pio's public ministry. Offering up his constant pain, the humble friar served by hearing confessions, celebrating Mass, and even building a hospital, until his death in the year of our Lord, 1968. For more about this day and others in the Church's calendar, visit thestationofthecross.com/saintsandseasons. Padre Pio, pray for us.
And now your headline news. The New York Post reports Putin says he is open to 1-year extension of U.S. arms control treaty. Vladimir Putin claimed yesterday he is amenable to a one-year extension of the arms control treaty with the U.S. that limits the number of nuclear weapons that the two countries have in their arsenals. Putin said that he would back an extension of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, or New START, if President Trump agrees to it as well. The overture comes as this New START is set to expire on February the 5th. Breitbart reports Google faces breakup for a second time. The DOJ will argue before a judge in Virginia that Google should be forced to divest a key piece of its business, the advertising exchange. Case centers around Google's dominance in the digital advertising space, particularly its control over the technology that connects advertisers with website publishers. The judge previously ruled that Google holds an illegal monopoly over the publisher ad server and the ad exchange markets, as well as unlawfully tying those two services together, violating Sections 1 and 2 of the Sherman Act. Google survived the previous search antitrust trial with a slap on the wrist, a far cry from the forced sale of Chrome and other remedies that the government was seeking. And Catholic Vote reports Raleigh Diocese tops the United States in Catholic conversions. The Diocese of Raleigh, North Carolina, has been named the leading diocese in the U.S. for conversions to the Catholic faith. For every 71 Catholics in the diocese, there was one adult baptism or reception into the church. Praise be to God, that is good news indeed. And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Luke chapter 8, verses 19 through 21. And Jesus' mother and brethren came unto him. They could not come at him for the crowd. And it was told to him, Thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to see thee. Who answering said to them, My mother and my brethren are they who hear the word of God and do it. The gospel of the Lord. Laus tibi Christi. Did you catch that subtlety there? If you want to be a disciple of the Most High God, then you have to hear the word of God and you have to do it. It's not one or the other, it's both and. You have to be hearers and doers. The once saved, always saved nonsense is yet again rebuffed from the Gospels. You have to walk the walk until the end. That's how that works. Praise be to God. Cornelius a Lapide would say, They therefore who keep the word of God in an honest and good heart bring forth fruit in proportion. Good fruit if the heart is good. Better if the heart is better. And the best fruit if the heart is perfect, i.e. 30-fold, 60-fold, or 100-fold. And it does not follow of necessity, as Toletus holds, that these words apply to different persons, for the heart of a believer may grow in grace until at last it is optimum, perfect in the sight of God. Father Haydock wrote, These brethren were not the sons of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of God, as Helvidius wickedly taught, nor yet the sons of Joseph by another wife. For as St. Jerome writes, not only Mary, but Joseph also observed virginity. This passage is often cited as a pretext against Catholics holding to the perpetual virginity of the Blessed Virgin Mary and St. Joseph. But it doesn't refer. These brethren are not the actual blood brothers of Jesus. Father McKeevely writes, in asking this question, he does not mean to deny that he had a real mother or to imply that he was ashamed of his mother or brethren, but probably to check the untimely importunity and interruption of the messenger, and also to show, as St. Ambrose intimates, that he preferred the ministry of his father to maternal affection. He wished to convey that he acknowledges no mother, no brother, should they in the least interfere with him while doing his father's business. And therein lies the rub, now doesn't it? But Our Lady wanted nothing other than the holy will of God. That's all she ever wanted, was the will of God in her life, in her son's life, in your life and in my life. She never wanted and never wants anything other than what God wants. She is perfectly aligned with God, which is why Jesus uses this as the example, because it's not her biology that makes her special. It was her fiat that made her special. Her choice. She's made immaculate from conception, and she chooses of her own free will to align her will to God's will, always and every time. Unlike you and me, who choose, extra cheeseburgers because they smell good. Because when we feel stress and anxiety, we give in to stress and anxiety. We have nothing but, this concupiscent nature to wrestle with. Whereas she, who never had concupiscence, never sinned, not even a venial sin, she gave herself over to God's will in every circumstance, in every case. He goes on, Father McKeevely. Our Redeemer extends the relationship to a higher degree and takes occasion to give a preference to his spiritual relationship, which he prized more than his natural relationship. In this respect, he prized his Blessed Mother more than all the rest of creation because in a spiritual sense, she was the most perfect and the holiest of God's creatures. In this, his Blessed Mother is preeminently included, as she had in the most perfect manner accomplished God's holy and adorable will. If you would be like the Blessed Virgin Mary and the brethren of the Lord, then you will do the will of the Father. Always. You will always choose to be doers and hearers, to persevere unto the end in doing the will of the Father. If you are to be like the Mother, who has done that every day that she walked on this earth, then you must do it as well. Therein lies the rub. This is not a rebuke of the Blessed Virgin Mary, but this is elevating her to a whole new status. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Did you know you can help evangelize simply by using your cell phone? The Station of the Cross is partnering with iCatholic Mobile, America's only Catholic mobile phone company. When you join iCatholic Mobile, a portion of every dollar will support our programming. Plus, you'll enjoy great service with iCatholic Unlimited 5G data, text, and talk. With iCatholic Mobile, you can stay connected with family and friends while also spreading the truth of Jesus Christ with clarity and charity. Join today at iCatholicMobile.com.
We were, shared with you yesterday. We talked extensively yesterday about the Charlie Kirk Memorial in Arizona. We played the entirety of Erica Kirk's speech there, where she forgave her husband's killer. It was profound. It was fun. It was sad and even inspirational. Was it a big tent revival? Was it a Republican conservative pep rally? Well, I think there's some arguments to that, but there was a lot to be said about it. But one of the questions I have in my mind is, because it was repeated extensively, is we've reached a tipping point. Have we really reached a tipping point? I'm kind of cynical about that, but I've invited Nicholas Cavazos of the Traditional Thomist podcast to be on the team to get his take. Good morning to you, Nicholas. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Praise be to God. So, do you think we have reached a tipping point?
I think as a society, we've reached a tipping point, definitely, in two ways in particular. I think both in the political sphere as well as in the religious sphere. I think for a long time, people have assumed that the generations were going to become more and more progressive as well as more and more atheistic. And what they're finding, according to the data, is that if you continue to have societies that are atheistic and progressive, i.e. actually just communistic, that society doesn't work very well. Society falls apart because people start to question, what are the fundamental building blocks of society? And Charlie Kirk was really good at pushing against that progressive narrative and that atheistic narrative and saying things like, on the one hand, on the natural sphere, we need to have a government that actually fights for the rights of its own people and not for the rights of foreigners. And then also in the spiritual aspect, really emphasizing the reality of family, marriage, getting married young, and of course, most important, cleaving to Christ. And I've seen this massive tipping point with my generation, Generation Z, where it's much more inclined to follow Kirk's lead than former generations would have.
Charlie Kirk is a very interesting guy, and I've said this now a few times, and I think it bears repeating that a month ago, you choose the date, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, I didn't think all that much about Charlie Kirk, to be honest with you. I knew he was out there. He had a huge audience. I knew he was going to these campuses and what he was doing in the debates and the dialogue and he was doing good things. I knew all of that, but I didn't honestly think all that much day to day about Charlie Kirk and his work at the Turning Point USA. And then he is murdered, and now the whole world is talking about him. Weeks now. Did you ever anticipate that level of impact?
I think that the level of impact, the reason why we're surprised by it in many ways as Catholics is because Catholics are in a bubble. We think that we're politically relevant oftentimes when in fact most of the time we're not. And the stats go to prove that. As an example, when it comes just to podcasts, even the top 10 podcasts in the world that focus on the subject of religion only have about 2% of the podcasting bandwidth or audience, if you will, that goes to it. And so I think it's easy for us to fall into these bubbles. Whereas, for instance, individuals like Charlie Kirk, he talks about politics, and so he's much more well known. But his death in such a violent and graphic way, particularly recorded with modern technology, I think really shocked a lot of individuals. And so while I'm a political junkie, and so I knew very much who he was, and I appreciated a lot of his work, I think seeing the way that he was killed, as well as the fallout where you saw the left celebrating his death online, really shocked a lot of just average, hardworking Americans who aren't necessarily the most politically plugged in because, it's not election season. And so I think that, his death really surprised a lot of individuals. It's the first real political assassination we've had in this country in such a public and violent manner in quite a long time.
Jimmy Kimmel got canceled because of his commentary on Charlie Kirk, but now he's back. He was gone for a week, so he got put into timeout for a week, and now he's back. So that didn't last very long. At the actual rally on Sunday, there was a lot of conversation. I listened to the vast majority of it, and I put out a video yesterday of my top 5 favorite moments from the various speeches. But a lot of the speeches felt the same. They felt like pep rally type of speeches playing to the crowd there. And there was clearly a large evangelical element in the room. So it kind of felt like a big tent revival too. So there's a lot of talk about this is the moment, we're going to seize this moment and all of this. But I'm not totally convinced. The reason why one of my favorite moments from that was because Erica Kirk gave a catechesis on marriage, and the look in her eyes like laser beams piercing through the hearts of everybody there. I mean, you could just imagine if you could take a survey of that crowd, 100,000 people, how many divorces would be accounted for? How many, infidelities would have to be accounted for? How many children out of wedlock would have to be accounted for from just the audience there in the room? I would imagine that number is staggering. I think we talk a good game about a conservative, bright, beautiful, religious future where Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, but I don't think we mean it, Nicholas Cavazos. I don't think we're prepared to be doers of the word. We just like to hear it, but I don't think we like to do it. What say you?
Oh, we definitely don't want to do it because the flesh is very much so strong. That's why God has to literally infuse his divine life inside of us in order to get us to reflect his son. The only reason that we can be even pleasing to God the Father is because if we have grace in the soul, we reflect Christ back to the Father. But in terms of the political sphere, I think a lot of us, of course, want this to take place, but because of this fallen tendency, we as a collective very much so struggle. But can we actually move forward? The questions I'm seeing in my generation are very interesting. I'm seeing questions along the nature of, should we as a generation, once we get into power, ban pornography? Those are discussions that have not really taken place before in the political sphere for a long time. And it's because, unlike many former generations, my generation was kind of the lab rats growing up on the internet, where it was just unfiltered, unfettered access to the internet from a very young age, high streamed. And so we're suffering the consequences of that. And so we're asking ourselves really tough questions. Also, seeing a lot of the young men going to the right and desiring religion, desiring to get their lives cleaned up. There's a lot of hope that we can see. What we have to do, though, is ward off pride and say, well, we have this all in the bank. Everything's going to be hunky-dory in the future. the only way that we can restore our nation is a moment of grace. And grace ultimately is a gift of God. It's an unmerited gift of God that he bestows upon his children. And so we very much so have to be humble in that respect and recognize that if God is going to restore us as a society, and when I say restore us, I'm not saying return us to a bygone American age. I'm just saying restore us in light of his proper order, then it's going to be an act of grace.
You know, it was pretty awesome to hear these politicians in particular. I mean, when's the last time you had the entire presidential cabinet at a memorial? Was that JFK's assassination, funeral, memorial, or whatever was the last time? I don't even know. Like it seems so unprecedented. You can imagine the memo that was sent out. You will be there. You will be present. You will give a talk, or whatever. It seems pretty amazing. And then Marco Rubio, I didn't put him on my top list of 5 most Catholic moments video that I put out yesterday. But Marco Rubio preached like an evangelical. I think he missed the mark just a wee bit. He should have been more Catholic, in my humble opinion. But it was impressive. It was impressive. What is your opinion overall of the speeches that were given by so many politicians there, proclaiming Christ and all the rest?
Yeah, I saw 5 hours of back-to-back speeches, every single one of them proclaiming Christ as King and as Lord. And I thought it was very moving and very beautiful, especially when you take into account the fact that the initial estimates are over 100 million people were watching live around the world. I think that that's a great witness to society. And where I really mourn is the fact that, let's be honest, a lot of those individuals who are politicians, at least when it comes to their rhetoric, were preaching more on Christ than we've seen most Catholic leaders in a really long time talk about Christ. And that goes to show that we need some serious soul searching in the church. I know we talk about the crisis. I know we talk about this, that, and the other, about, papal politics and stuff. But when it really comes down just back to the meat and potatoes, to the brass tacks, if you will, I think we have just forgotten Christ, and we've put Christ behind just this wall of political issues inside of the church, when in reality, we just need to sit with Christ and say, I am broken. Please teach me. And so seeing all of these politicians do that, of course, I want to presume the good for them and hope that they're sincere in all of what they're saying. And we should continue to pray for all of them. I really did like, for instance, J.D. Vance saying that I've talked more about Christ this week than I think I ever publicly have because of the impact of this. Amen. And praise God for that. Of course, we should all be motivated. And I think that this is hopefully a good sign. Ultimately, though, if it's going to last, if it's going to materialize into action, because actions speak louder than words, it's going to be, again, an act of God's grace. And we should pray to the Lord that happens, rather than getting on our high horse and just, texting into Twitter chats, this, that, and the other about how, well, it was really inauthentic because of this, that, and the other reason.
Now, the Turning Point is continuing on with its mission. It's got a whole list of university stops that it's going to be making, and it's already underway, and they've invited Michael Knowles and Tucker Carlson and a bunch of people to do what Charlie did. But I really feel like, you got Michael Knowles on the team, but will Michael Knowles represent the Catholic faith in the way that it ought to be? Should we debate based on just, common natural law, or should we debate on the divinely revealed truth that is in its fullness in the one holy Catholic and apostolic truth? I think this movement should be led by Catholics. What say you?
Yeah, I think if he's going to evangelize for the Catholic faith, the best strategy would be, I would say, an all-encompassing of both the natural law and divine revelation, putting those things forward because individuals be able to see the fullness of truth. That being said, though, the hardest part right now about trying to convert individuals to the Catholic faith, or even just being a public representative like Mr. Knowles is of the Catholic faith, is the fact that it seems like we're car salesmen who are selling messed up cars. And what I mean by that is that we go out and we say, here's the Catholic faith, and yet so many of our leaders, and according to the polls, so many of our faithful don't even hold on to the faith. It's one thing to not hold on to the faith. It's another thing to have our leaders persecute people who do hold on to the very faith that they're required to believe in. And so it does make the system seem really wonky. That being said, though, how things can improve is if individuals like Mr. Knowles or any other Catholic commentator is honest about the situation in inside of the church rather than kind of just, playing hopscotch with it. More for the broader conservative point, though, I think using the natural law for just your average conservative would be very, very much so desirable for, if you will, political apologetics inside of college campuses and things along that nature, because it holds people to a rational standard that most people can conceive of, because we can all agree things like rape are wrong. But ultimately, you do have to link it back to Christ and its original founding.
Well said, well said. But music means we're out of time with Nicholas Cavazos, the traditional Thomist. If you want to come back at the top of the hour, maybe we can do the after show together. That'd be fun. I'd love to get into the Donald Trump. That was one of my favorite moments of the rally, was Donald Trump in his self-deprecating humor, which I absolutely love. God's chosen voice is usually sarcastic. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It was a great joke. I enjoyed it a lot, and I also thought it was sincere all at the same time. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean, and here are your headline news. The Hill reports earthquake jolts San Francisco Bay Area. Yesterday, a quake of a magnitude 4.3 had its epicenter about a mile east of Berkeley. It was felt across the East Bay Area, including in San Francisco, and as far north as Santa Rosa, and as far south as Santa Cruz. The United States Geological Survey said the earthquake struck at a depth of 4.34 miles. Initially, it was at a 4.6, but they've since reduced it down to a 4.3 earthquake. There are no reports of damage or injuries. And Just the News reports Trump announces $4 billion railroad deal with Kazakhstan. President Donald Trump on Monday announced that he had reached an agreement with the Kazakh government for a $4 billion purchase of railroad equipment. Trump called it the largest railroad equipment purchase in history. Kazakhstan is part of the Collective Security Treaty Organization and a close economic partner to Moscow and Beijing. It boasts a sizable Russian-speaking minority as well. A Catholic Vote reports White House links Tylenol use during pregnancy to autism. President Donald Trump announced yesterday that his administration will issue a physician advisory and add new warning labels to acetaminophen, citing studies that suggest a link between the drug's use during pregnancy and an increased risk of autism and other neurodevelopmental issues. And those are your headline news. Praise be to God in all things. There is a great series of articles over at the European Conservative by the great Dr. Hélène de Lauzun. She has a whole list of them there. In fact, we're going to link to all of them for you, because France is, obviously the eldest daughter of Holy Mother Church. And so we keep a close eye on what's going on there. And what we're seeing from the outside is a lot of turmoil and a lot of unrest, protests, government instability, immigration out of control, demographic winter, etc. And she writes on all of these topics. Again, EuropeanConservative.com. She joins us this morning to discuss it. Dr. Lauzun, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your invitation, Joe.
Praise be to God. I want to ask you to start with about the Charlie Kirk murder in America. It seems like this story is being discussed all over the world, which surprises me personally. I wouldn't have expected that a month ago. I would not have said Charlie Kirk would have that kind of an impact. But it does seem like that's the case. Is it being discussed in France? Are the French people paying attention to this story? And if so, why?
Yes, it's been largely commented in France too. I think that the particularity of the circumstances of the murder of a man, apparently very peaceful and eager, who has been violently attacked and shot while he was is, of course, a very striking image here in France. And there is, of course, a huge debate around the personality of Charlie Kirk. On the left, many commentators, politicians, journalists say that in a way he deserved what happened to him because, of course, they are in contradiction with his statements, his methods, his beliefs. But on the other hand, many people are authentically shocked by the violence and by the strong contrast between the peaceful man and his assassination. And you know that there is a famous motto, a famous sentence in France, which is "Je suis Charlie," I am Charlie. It was used at the time of attack against the leftist newspaper, but now it has been reused by the right wing. Yeah, we are Charlie, nous sommes Charlie, but another Charlie, and a man of another kind.
I remember that story very well. So I had this conversation last week with some guests about what's going on in the United Kingdom. Big rally there. I think it was 1 million people, to some reports. So there seems to be a movement of conservatism popping up in various countries across Europe and across the West. Is that true for France? Is there a movement towards conservatism in France?
It's difficult to say because we have had very big protests and demonstrations in the last weeks, but it's very different in nature. We've seen in Great Britain. The rally organized by Tommy Robinson found a real popular support in defense of the nation, of the French nation, of the British nation, unfortunately, in France, there is nothing of the kind for the moment. We've had 2 days of unrest on the 10th, on the 18th of September, but it was mainly handled by the far left and the trade unions, and there were strikes, and there was not a very popular with the flags. Some French conservative movements try to imitate the raising the colors movement that was born in Great Britain, but without a big success in France, unfortunately.
So the French citizens, the people of France, where are they at then as far as their country, their heritage, their culture, their society? Are they indifferent?
I don't think they're indifferent. I think that the deep state of the country is more aware than ever about the dangers that we have to face with uncontrolled immigration, rising crime, but they are not ready to give to it a political embodiment that is going to change the game. That's the drama for France now. You may have seen that we are in a political uncertainty. We have a prime minister, but we still have no government. It is very difficult to find a budget. So, the discontent is growing, but it is multifaceted, and it's very hard to find a consensus among all these French people who are discontent with Macron, with his regime, but who for the moment found the political out of that.
So that was one of the questions I did want to ask, was about the government there under Macron, because we were seeing, this need for a prime minister, and they're coming and going. We just don't understand why is it so hard for them to have a solid, stable government, and what does it mean if the government is unstable? How long can that actually go before things really get out of hand?
Well, the problem is the original decision is Macron's responsibility to dissolve the National Assembly last summer in 2024. There were snap elections at that time, and the results gave the Assembly split into 3 groups of almost equal size, but the consequence is that there is no stable majority. So it is impossible to obtain a political consensus, either on a budget or on some bills to be passed. So the government has a very hard job to do. So we've been in the situation that governments have been overthrown in a few months, which has never been the case during the Fifth Republic, instaured by General de Gaulle at the end of the 50s. So for the moment, there is absolutely no solution, since we still have the same assembly with those same 3 groups unable to get a majority. So as long as Macron doesn't want to dissolve the assembly or organize new elections, we are going to have the same scenario repeated again and again. So for the moment, we have a government. We have a prime minister, but we have no government. His job is to nominate some ministers, but he's unable to do so because nobody wants to go there, and because Macron is not able to reach a consensus.
And how long can that actually last before things get really bad?
That's a very good question. I think it's going to last almost perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps a little less. Some say that the government is going to be known at the beginning of October. For the moment, you may know that Macron is in the United States for the General Assembly of the United Nations. So he's not going to do anything during this journey. So perhaps we can expect to have a team at the beginning of October. Anyway, there is a constitutional pressure, because France is supposed to vote for its budget before the end of October. So I think that we are likely to have a government before the end of the upcoming month.
And I imagine this is adding to the unrest, the general sentiment of the French people. So how do they, what is the approval rating? How do they see Macron? Do they favor him? Do they tolerate him? Do they not? I mean,
no, the unpopularity of Macron and his prime minister has never been so high. Sébastien Lecornu, the man who has just been appointed prime minister, is beginning his term with the lowest rate for a prime minister ever during the Fifth Republic. So the discontent is absolutely huge.
So do you see a future in which like Marine Le Pen and her party would rise to power and form a government?
Well, in France, we generally wait for being in a very big crisis to find an outcome. So I think that the situation can degenerate still a bit more in the upcoming month. It's very uncertain for Marine Le Pen, because you may know that she's under a process of appeal in a trial that found her guilty a few months ago. And she doesn't know yet if she's going to be able to be a candidate for the presidential race in 2027. So many uncertainties for the people on the right in France.
So let's talk about immigration then, because we still see stories about illegal immigration and its impact and effects on society. There was a story, I think just the other day, of a gentleman in a wheelchair that was murdered on the streets. I'm not sure what the details were, but we see these all the time here in the United States. And honestly, we look at them and we think, oh, it's just horrible over there. I mean, how bad really is it? What's the reality versus what's reported in the news?
Unfortunately, I think that the reality is far worse than what is reported in the news, because we only focus on 1 or 2 news items. But stories of the kind are happening every day all over the country. A few years ago, problems of immigration used to be located only in some regions, especially, for example, southeast of France. Nowadays, it's spreading all over the country, and even some part of the country we were rather preserved, like Brittany, are now concerned with social unrest due to immigration. And if you look at the figures, of course, they are very bad, since legal and illegal immigration have considerably raised during Macron's term since he was elected in 2017.
And so do the French people, do they want a suppression of illegal immigration? Do they want what like we have in the United States under Donald Trump, where we lock the border down and we shut down the illegal immigration movements? Do they want that there?
Yeah, there is a strong desire among the French population to rule out against illegal and legal immigration. There are many polls showing that. For example, we know that 3 out of 4 French people want a referendum to control immigration. But the problem is that the superstructure, especially the state bodies like the Constitutional Council or the State Council, which are very high courts in the French government, they are blocking every possible reform. So several bills were passed in the last months trying to fix things, but they've been systematically overthrown or cancelled or corrected by these institutional bodies. So it's very difficult to move the things, because if there is no very strong political will, you cannot obtain a concrete result against these bodies.
Okay, so I want to switch. We're going to be up against a break here in just a minute, but I wanted to at least ask this before the break. How is France on the issue over Israel and Gaza? That seems to be impacting many Western countries, the debate over Palestine. Where does France land on that?
You know that Macron was the first minister to recognize officially Palestine. He's been for that because there is a kind of opportunism in his decision. He wants to get comfortable with the large part of Muslim electorals, and the question of the defense of the Palestinian state is supported by the far left for electoral, because now the fund is with Muslims in France. So a kind of dangerous mixture between domestic interest, electoral interest, and a national position that has been criticized largely of the French opinion.
We're having a conversation with Dr. Elena de Luzon. She is with the European Conservative. The European Conservative, their website is europeanconservative.com. We'll put a link to it in the show notes for you today. She's got some great articles to let you know what is going on in France over there. And we've been discussing it this morning. Dr. Luzon, welcome back. I want to ask you about the demographics of France. America and most countries of the West are not having enough children to sustain our society, our culture. But these immigrants, especially the Muslim immigrants coming across Europe right now, are having a lot of children. So it seems like Europe will belong to them in the future, and we will lose all of our culture. Do you see it that way? Is it that drastic?
Yeah, the figures are very worrying. Except France was used to be a kind of exception in Europe with a high fertility rate, but it's no longer the case. And we entered traffic winter, as you were mentioning it. I think that the reasons that are multiple. There has been a strong decrease in all the family policies in the last years, and it's getting harder and harder for families to children. And that's not all. I think that the fertility rate and the growth of family in France are touched by the global degradation of the state of society in terms, for example, of health, public health, the of school. The national educational system is getting worse and worse every year. So as you do not feel confident in raising your children in such a world. So the rising in crime also is also a matter of concern. So the global, of course, the global decrease in the purchasing power. So all kind of factors are united to not to encourage the families to have babies. And I think it's very worrying because in France, as you may know, we are in a system that is a pay-to-go system, pension. If you do not have children, you do not have pensions for elderly. And so the problem is that the only solution that is put forward by that is immigration as an answer to this lack of young generations. Yes, we are facing a rather dark and gloomy future in the next decades, I think.
So what about the hierarchy of the church in France? The bishops, the priests, are they catechizing? Are they preaching the hard truth that the French people need to hear to welcome them or encourage them or to challenge them for a reversion back to their roots, back to their Catholic faith?
I think that on the whole, the French bishops are neither progressive nor traditionalist. They are in a kind of expecting position without daring much, without condemning on either way. And that's the problem, because on the whole, they are lacking courage. We could see that, for example, during all the debates that were going in France concerning euthanasia, surrogacy, etc. They have a very timid voice. Of course, they condemn, they recall the traditional teaching of the church. For example, at the time of Fiducia Supplicans, there were several voices that raised saying, well, it's not a good idea. We have to promote the man and woman, but it's always a very timid voice. And I think that many Catholic believers in France would expect more courageous voice from their prelates.
Are they just, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of the government? Is there some sort of law that prevents them from preaching the truth, or else they get in trouble? I mean, why would they be so afraid?
No, they don't risk anything. They are not going to be sent to prison, but they are too sensitive to a kind of moral and social pressure given by the media, given by the left, who has a kind of moral leadership. So, but I think they have a margin of maneuver that they do not use, though they could use it. I've heard some echoes from, for example, from on like a gay marriage or abortion or anything that kind of thing. Say, well, we would expect from the bishops, but they don't dare. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating because I think that there is a place, there is room enough for them to express their teaching and their strong voice, and they do not use that room.
What about the laity in France? Often in America, we get very frustrated with our bishops for very similar reasons. We feel like they're sitting on the fence, they're lukewarm, and we want them to be courageous, and they don't. So lay folks take it upon themselves to proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful, to get loud and to deal with these issues in society. So how about the lay folk in France? Are they doing the same?
Yeah, they are very dynamic movement. Even if it's a minority, they do exist, especially among the traditional movement. And there are initiatives which are both societal or spiritual. I will take an example. For example, the pilgrimage, the regional pilgrimage that have been created in the last month, the very famous Chartres pilgrimage, which is a traditional pilgrimage. You have many kinds which are growing in a region in Provence, in Brittany, in which is the west part of France. So they are gathering more and more people, thousands of people, very traditional liturgy with claiming their identity with pride and beautiful songs and traditions. So initiatives are extremely engaging because they are gathering more and more people and young people. But that remains a minority. So to pray, of course, for that minority to grow and to more and more influence on the whole state of the society.
Where do you see France in 10 years from now? What would France look like?
It's very difficult to say, and I'm afraid to say that I'm rather pessimistic because, of course, there are fights nowadays in society, but, it's already rotten. So I don't know if these forces that I was mentioning are going to be strong enough to calm the decline, and sometimes things can go very quickly in or another. As I mentioned some minutes ago, in France, we are deep at the bottom of the hole before rising up. And it's difficult to say if we are already at the bottom of the hole or if there are some years of decay again ahead of us. So in 10 years, for the moment, I remain rather pessimistic. But since pessimism is not an every guideline in your life, I still fight, I still write, I still pray, and I still hope for my country, of course.
What about your children? I mean, is there a future? I think a lot of us have anxiety over the future because of our children have to grow up in a world that seems crazier by the day. Do the French have hope for their future, for their children?
I am a mother of 4, so of course I'm fighting for them, and I think that there is a kind of hope in these kind of parallel communities that we can build, but I think we cannot hope for a general transformation of France as a whole. The most important is to transmit what we consider in our families and to build a kind of very solid and vivid society with its core values.
Wow. Dr. Hélène de Luzon, I'm grateful for your time today. Thank you for your input and your reportage over at the European Conservative. EuropeanConservative.com is the website. We're going to link directly to her list of articles over there, but EuropeanConservative.com is the place to go. Dr. Luzon, God bless you. God love you. Have a great day, and we look forward to having you back soon. A Catholic Take and all of our shows are made possible through the support of listeners just like you. Your support for our fall appeal will help us to expand the reach and impact of my show, A Catholic Take, and all the other great programs right here at the Station of the Cross. You can help us today by either calling 877-711-8500 or visiting our website, thestationofthecross.com. Thank you in advance, and may God bless you and your family.
And we're back. Welcome to the After Show, everyone.
Hey, good morning to you, Snickers09. First-time commentator. Praise be to God. Glad you're on the team. Says, good morning from Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Oh, yeah.
Regina.
Oh, yeah. Is it Regina?
It's Regina.
I knew that. Totally knew that. Regina, Saskatchewan from Canada. Actually awake for a live show. Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you for doing it. Praise be to God.
It's pretty early over there.
Guaguenza 61. That is early. They're on Mountain Time? Is Saskatchewan Mountain Time?
I think it's Central Time.
I think so.
Is it?
Might be Central Time.
Saskatchewan's north of Montana, right?
Yeah, I think it's I'm pretty sure it's Mountain Time.
It's only one province over from Ontario. It's Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC. So I'm not sure.
Well, it's definitely not East Coast time. I know that. Central. They're saying Central. All right. Well, then you're on my time frame. I know exactly
So
how
it's
you
6 a.m. It's 6 a.m. for them right now.
I'm rarely awake for a live show either, Snickers, so you're in good company.
Yeah,
Praise
exactly.
be to God. Guaguenza, good morning. Edward Clancy, good to see you here. Robert DeBruce, good morning to you. James 16897, good morning to you. Praise be to Jesus. By the way, I'm trying to get the guy who handed out miraculous medals to be on the team on Friday. He's not responded to me though, so we'll see if he does. I'd be very curious to get him to talk about how he went to the Charlie Kirk Memorial passing out miraculous medals. I think that was a cool story. But obviously, our good friend Nicholas Cavazos is back on the team. He is a high-level, high-ranking secret member of the Secret Trad Inc. organization, by the way. I'm pretty sure he's the guy who teaches all the secret hand signals and symbology for the organization. So welcome back to the show, Nicholas Cavazos. Is Trad Inc. dead?
Yeah,
I'm told Trad Inc. is dead now. Is that true?
I think that the whole discussion around Trad Inc. is one of the gayest discussions I've ever heard. It's just so stupid. It's I guess the way I put it is it's basically two things. One, like angsty SEDEs and SSPX resistance people who are just angry that the whole Pope Francis like 24/7 outrage parade is over. And then two, businesses and corporations that made like a living on that are now looking and saying, wow, okay, Pope Leo, regardless of what you think about him, he's not a Francis in the sense of how he speaks. Right, and so we can't like consume that type of outrage or produce that type of outrage content rather. And so this whole discussion about, Trad Inc. is falling behind Pope Leo, this, that, and the other, it just begs for attention. And for me, again, it's like with how small the trad movement actually is and with how important things like getting the gospel around the world are, this whole like nonsensical infighting with just no-name influencers just arguing about, like, does Trad Inc. exist? Is it dead? I'm like, it's a useless discussion. It's literally so stupid, in my opinion.
You got to admit, though, there's one thing that I think that's not being talked about when it comes to Trad Inc. that I think is brilliant. For the first time, we're seeing Pope-splainers and SEDEs agreeing against and joining forces against the Trad Inc., which is hilarious to me. So they find themselves on the same page in their criticisms of those that they would classify as Trad Inc. I think that's kind of hilarious as well. So there's some silver lining. Hey, Phoebe Deggs, good morning to you. Never heard of the Trad Inc.? Well, you got to spend more time on X if you're gonna. That's where you hear.
You're not terminally online enough if you haven't heard. Of Trad Inc.
That's your problem. You probably have like responsibility, family, job, something like that. That's all getting in your way. You just got to quit all of that and just be on X all the time.
At the risk of mentioning tech stuff on the air, Nick, could you just double check for me that your microphone is connected?
Oh, microphone and camera. It's weird. Every time I plug them in and try to reconnect them in your guys' system, it always rejects it. I don't know why.
Really?
So if it looks like streaming
it's the browser. Yeah, what browser are you using?
I'm using Google Chrome, so
that's what it is. I've had to go from Google Chrome to Microsoft Edge. Now I'm on Firefox, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous. Yeah, thank you, vMix. vMix is from Down Under, by the way.
I think sometimes it's often that vMix calibrates themselves to a browser, and then the browser updates, and the browser doesn't know that vMix exists. So it's like, Oh,
Google, hello,
catch up.
vMix is the most important thing to us in the planet.
Exactly.
So
and that should be Google's priority.
It should be. I totally agree. Adam, good morning to you. Trad of the world. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Welcome home.
I think it says word.
Says Mac. Wow, Mac is throwing digs.
But I don't know what either of those means. Trad of the word?
Somebody, word or world?
It says word, but I don't know what either of those statements would mean.
Somebody mentioned I had a caterpillar on my face. What? What are you talking about? What's wrong with my...
You do need to grow the mustache back.
The mustache is there. You mean the beard? You would have me grow the beard back?
Yeah, I texted Joe yesterday that I was psychologically shattered whenever I saw him without a beard. And it is kind of true because you seriously look like you've lost like 30 plus years. It's actually kind of scary.
God. Praise be to God.
Joe's transgenerational. He's a Zoomer now.
Transgenerational.
I don't know what he is, but it is really weird. Like when I turned on the camera, when I turned on yesterday just to put in my daily comment, I was like, I don't even know if I can comment on this channel anymore. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm getting a good kick out of all the comments. It's hilarious to me. It's so funny. Yesterday, Anthony Abate, Mr. Godfather there of the Trad Inc., he was like, I was chuckling because I'm like listening to Erica Kirk's speech and it's all emotional and he's giving me a hard time in the chat box and I was just laughing. It was so kind of funny. I was trying not to show it too much, but it was really hilarious actually. Good morning to you, Liz Finch. Praise be to God. Did you get your book, Liz? I hope you got your prize. She was the first to win and the last to receive. That's too bad. First will be last, last will be first, as they say. Melissa, good morning to you. I was weirded out a bit, too, when I saw no beard. Come on, it's not that bad. Yesterday, the straw poll suggested I leave it off, right? I think that was the predominant response was, let the beard go. I will be growing it back. I just don't know how soon I'll be growing it back. That's the only trick. And honestly, it comes down to what my wife has to say. But we'll see. On the thought about miraculous medals, are we sure Erica is Catholic? Well, I'm not sure of anything anymore, Paul.
Yes, she is Catholic.
We've heard that. It's been said a bunch of times. So, but
the better question is like most of the Catholic Church even Catholic? That's the better question. Yeah, because it's like when you look at the stats and you see that the vast majority approve of contraception, abortion, and homosexuality and female priests, it's like, I'm going to take the girl who's praying the rosary, going to mass every Sunday, and Erica Kirk as Catholic as opposed to the rest of y'all. So yeah, I'll take her anyway.
Trad Cat Canson says, us trads can't lose the beards. It's part of the costume with cigar or pipe and fedora. Now, I do wear the fedora. But I don't do the cigar or the pipe. So,
see, now that
I was already on thin ice when it came to the trad thing.
Now that you have a fedora with the mustache, you look like how Tom Selleck would have looked if he'd gotten the Indiana Jones role.
Didn't Tom Selleck yeah, that's true. I knew he was up for that, right?
Yep.
But didn't Tom Selleck do a film noir type of investigator role at some point where he wore a fedora? Why do I have that in my head right now?
That sounds familiar, actually. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
There was some movie he played like some, whatever. Honeybee, good morning to you. Beardless is much easier on the eyes. Is it now? Hey, now. Praise be to God. Christine OFS, good morning. Susie from Down Under, good morning to you. Erica's practicing Catholic, goes to Mass regularly and adoration. Charlie also. Yeah, we saw those pictures and they were beautiful. Praise be to Jesus. There was a lot of talk about him being on the journey, and I saw lots of anecdotal conversation going on X about how he was talking to this bishop or that, whatever. He definitely had friends in his life that were trying to plant that seed. Candace Owens, Michael Knowles, Jack Posobiec, just to name a couple, but there were many more. Even Taylor Marshall had talked to him. So, we can pray and hope that he was on that journey. But I'm told that Erica is going to address this publicly sometime, maybe this week. So what if she says something that we don't like? What if she says like, oh, he was not thinking about it. He was not on the way. But that's going to upset us, I think, a wee bit. It's going to be difficult, I think, to hear that. Groucho, you think I look like Groucho, Alberto? Like, wow.
Hello.
Or is that just you trying to indicate that I should be silent and stop talking? That could be it as well.
Hey, if you don't like Joe without the beard, you can leave in a taxi. If you can't get a taxi, you can leave in a huff. If that's too soon, you can leave in a minute and a half.
I'm just going to point out. I'm going to William Jones. I'm going to point out that beardless Joe McClane and Joseph Stalin have never been seen in the same place at the same time. That's great. That is so good.
Hey, one shave is a tragedy. 2 shaves is a statistic.
Yeah.
A lot of people think you're thinking of Quigley Down Under, Joe, but I think you might be thinking of Lassiter.
I was definitely not thinking of Quigley Down Under.
Yeah, I think you might.
Where he played a cowboy with a Sharps rifle who was an amazing shot.
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of Lassiter, where he plays a thief in the 30s.
Yes, that's maybe what I'm thinking about. Not a PI, but a thief. Okay. And he wore a fedora, right?
Yeah, he's got a fedora and a suit. Yeah, very late 30s costume.
There you go. Praise be to God. Hey, speaking of statistics and thieves, let's talk about Donald Trump at the rally. It's obvious to me that Donald Trump loathes, hates, has nothing but vitriol for his enemies. Wants to see them all be crushed under the weight of his presidential boot.
That's why all his political opponents are in jail right now.
That's 100% true. Pam Bondi right now is arresting every single one of his enemies, and they're all just going to go to Guantanamo Bay. They're not even going to go to your local jail cell or prison. They're just going to go straight to Guantanamo and work the soup kitchen there, as I think they're going to do. So why do you have issues with trad Catholics who point what is obvious out there, Nicholas Cavazos? I watched a recent video of you hating on trad Catholics who point this out, which is very obvious. Why do you do that?
Because trads are the worst, man. They're like the absolute worst sometimes when it comes to like anything American. Like in all honesty, like the doom pill train has to like end at some point, man. But yeah, in all seriousness, although I am being serious with that statement, the reason that I was upset yesterday watching some of my fellow Catholics talk about this was because of the hyperbolic reaction that they had toward this speech, which was, in my opinion, a fairly just ordinary Trump-style speech. But in this context in particular, it was exceedingly clear that what was taking place was that Trump was using self-deprecating humor to compare himself to Charlie. Mm-hmm. And that's why I showed the video on my own show. Now, you rightly point out that Trump probably does have like great vitriol toward his enemies. I don't think that's too hard to see. I think it was sincere.
I thought it was him being telling a joke, him going off script, and being sincere all at the same time. I think just like I do, I recognize my faults. I get it. And I just think that was typical, classic Donald Trump. And I loved it, to be honest with you. I thought it was fun. I thought it was good because part of my issue with the memorial was the canned style speeches, the pep rally, evangelical big tent revival speeches. Jack Posobiec gave one. I mean, Hegseth, they were all giving the same bloody speech. And Donald Trump gets up there and he's reading his thing. And then he goes off script for a minute and just was himself for a second. And I loved it. I thought it was fun.
I have a friend,
Donald Trump.
I have a friend who thought the entire event pretty much was mostly just really lame, and he basically he enjoyed he thought the Donald Trump part was funny, and he basically said that a lot of Catholics who deep down just think the event was lame are basically just too cowardly to say that outright and be seen to be criticizing that. And so they're just using Trump as a lightning rod of like, oh, Trump is bad in this case, and instead of actually criticizing the event.
I thought it was good.
That's what I'm saying. I'm describing what my friend's analysis of why so many people are lashing out at Trump is that they're just using him as a lightning rod of criticism because they're too afraid to actually say, well, the event was kind of this lame Protestant pep rally type of thing for the most part, even if
Yeah.
They liked one speech or another speech. They just didn't like the event overall. And my friend was saying, I just didn't like the event overall, and I thought Trump was the only funny bit. He thought
Don Jr. was also
funny too. But
I loved Don Jr. making fun of his dad. That was also sincere. Good. It was good timing. It was fun. It broke up the pace of the Big Tent revival. So, which it's not bad to hear all these people proclaim Christ. That's obviously good. I'm not criticizing that in and of itself, but it felt a little canned to me over and over.
Sure.
Sure.
As I said yesterday, I'm not a fan of obviously ecumenism because I do think it leads to an indifferentism and a synchronism. But what's kind of taking a step back from like the perspective of dogma for a second and just looking at optics, what's so interesting to me is that, you see all these evangelicals praising, or offering up their praises, etc. And the fact that our own mass is banned in most parishes. Like, it's something to where you go and you see like all of these people, they're living their spiritual lives completely unburdened, at least by like crazy lunatic authorities who are like trying to micromanage and regulate their lives from 3,000 miles away. It's just something that I thought was psychologically interesting watching it. But yeah, when it came to the Trump comments, I had no issue with it. And what I was criticizing very much so was this kind of mentality that I've just seen over the last couple of years of this kind of holier than thou mentality when it comes to Trump, where it's rather than like a rational criticism of a policy. So like, for instance, IVF, which we talked a lot about during the election season, rather than something like that, it's just going down and nitpicking statements. So it's like, for instance, yesterday, my friend Tim Flanders, right, one of my criticisms of him was, and again, I love Tim for the record, I do think he's one of the holiest men you'll ever meet. But like, he puts up this statement from Jimmy Kimmel, and he's like, I don't really see why the Jimmy Kimmel thing was that big of a deal. And it's like, well, the reason that Jimmy Kimmel got fired was because he lied and said that the shooter was a MAGA Republican. Right. That's a blatant lie. It's not that, Jimmy Kimmel was just axed because of naughty things that he said a decade and a half ago, i.e. original cancel culture. It's because of just insane things that he's saying now. And a network, of course, is not bound to the same type of legal stringency as the government is, because the First Amendment applies to the federal government, not to a private enterprise. So a private enterprise, of course, can axe you. I mean, God forbid one day, the Station of the Cross is like, Joe McClain, we're really mad that you haven't grown your beard back, so we're going to go ahead and axe you from the program. So it's like they could do that, obviously, for some actual reason. But yeah, it's just this hyperbolic, holier than thou tendency that just drives me up a wall.
Yeah, he's back, Jacob. You're right. Jimmy Chemical. Is that a Freudian slip? That was a Freudian slip. Jimmy Chemical. Jimmy Kimmel is back tonight. He didn't get fired. He just got put in timeout for a week, apparently. So he's back. He's bigger than ever.
Though. Only kind of back, because I don't know if you saw, but like a lot of the big TV network providers have already come out and said that they're not going to be streaming his stuff.
Praise be to God. So, my issue is not. My issue is that he's a hack, and the free market should decide that he wasn't great anyway. He wasn't entertaining. I compared him yesterday to Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon, a liberal, clearly, but is somebody who understands, like, you can talk to somebody who has a different opinion than you and still have a conversation. You can be entertaining and funny. Jimmy Fallon's got some talent. Jimmy Kimmel has never been talented.
Fallon took a lot of heat for having Trump on his show in 2016, right. And he ruffled his hair. Fallon got called a Nazi enabler for doing that. That was kind of. I mean, I still think I think Fallon's incredibly unfunny and a terrible interviewer.
That's fair. That's fair, but I think he's definitely more funny than Jimmy Kimmel.
To steal a line from the great Mike Stoklasa, the only thing these guys should host is a Parasite.
That's so good. Thanks. I like Jimmy Kimmel's musical talents. That's kind of when I say
Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon.
Fallon. Forgive me, Fallon.
Yeah, he does a lot of musical themed stuff, doesn't he?
He's very talented musically.
I'm just going to go back to Dick Cavett reruns on YouTube.
There you go. Dick Cavett, where are you now? Who knows? Kevlar Catholic is on the team on the Telegram. Praise be to God. Thank you for being there. Really appreciate you. He says, ask Nick if he thinks that the TPUSA will be able to go on long term without Charlie. Also, sounds like lots of pro-Israel money involved in keeping it going. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there is an article out over at the Gray Zone. Top pro-Israel TPUSA donor terminated support for Kirk in days before death because he didn't like Kirk criticizing Israel for any reason whatsoever. In fact, I was watching video yesterday of Kirk talking about his changing opinion on Israel. He was never anti-Israeli, like individual persons, Jewish persons. He was not up for anti-Semitism, but he was definitely critical of the Israeli government and their choices, their policies. And so that's got him some donors that are backing off. You know, that's an interesting, more complicated issue, isn't it, Nicholas?
Yeah, the future of TPUSA, I think, is going to be very, very positive. So I have a lot of friends who are involved in different universities around the country, and they've just seen in existing chapters an explosion of new members, as well as in just the explosion of new chapters when it comes to people who are actually starting them. So,
wow.
The question will be is where will it go? I say, don't underestimate Erica. I think that she has a lot of talent that we're about to see. It's, of course, going to be different because she's a different person than Charlie. But I do think she has a lot of talent. And so TPUSA might actually be, interestingly enough, more conservative because of her personality as well as because of her own determination. So never underestimate that. But, of course, we'll have to see. Time will tell. As far as the Israeli thing goes, TPUSA has always been very much so someone who's an organization that has supported the cause of Israel. And I think that that's, of course, a just area of criticism. That was one of the areas that I had, for instance, criticism of Charlie Kirk's foreign policy positions. It was just a disagreement that I had with him. But that being the case, I would say two things. One, recognize that Israel's support amongst the youth is so low at the moment, on both the left and the right, that I don't know if any amount of money being thrown at the organization really is going to prop up any type of long-term, Gen Z support for the cause. And then number two, always again, this is going to make some of your audience mad, Joe, but I'm going to say it anyway. Be careful about obviously where you go and you listen to information from when it comes to, like, for instance, looking at the identity of the shooter and things along that nature, because, I've seen a lot of my own commenters over the last, week or so who have just flamed me as being kind of this government shill because I've just been following the FBI and just kind of trying to get all the information as we possibly can. And their response to me is, Nick, you need to go and watch this YouTube video that actually exposes everything. So, i.e., circumstantial evidence against all the evidence that we do have at the moment. And it's like, look, I'm obviously open to hearing other theories, but at the moment, circumstantial evidence does not outweigh a firearm, DNA evidence, a confession in a chat, multiple family members' confessions, friendship confessions, lover confessions, video footage, and all other kinds of stuff. So as much as, I guess I'll end it this way. If Nick Fuentes says that it's not Israel, then you know that the people saying it's Israel really have gone too far.
Wait, you're saying that he wasn't actually shot by a different shooter in underground tunnels?
Yeah, unfortunately not. It would make a great movie, but
yeah,
that's
exactly.
about it.
It would.
And it makes great podcast fodder. That's for sure.
That's for
exactly.
Sure. That the problem I think I have with the whole conspiracy theories of events like this. I was talking to my friend after Mass about this, my screenwriter friend, and I'm like, I go, if you were in control of the narrative from the government perspective, what would you say to the public that would, just like sort of calm things down? Because it bugs me to no end that they know we're out here chattering about all of this, and yet they still refuse to say certain things when they talk about the story. They still refuse to address very forthrightly that gun in a way that will help. It won't end the speculation. It won't end the debate and all of that. But it does go a long way to sort of squashing it a bit and sort of taking some people who find themselves in the middle ground and being swayed by some of this stuff, like out of that phase and going, and I'm just going to back off now. Like, just use the word. Just tell us why exactly. Everybody's wanting to know if the gun was broken down with a screwdriver and an Allen wrench up on the roof, which is bizarre, but let's just say he did it because, you know, he's the fastest disassembly guy in the world who can do that super quick. And then he puts it back together in the woods. Why would he do that if he's on the run? That doesn't make any sense to the average mind. So just address it. Don't avoid it. Address it. Like there's so many little details that they just avoid instead of saying them and addressing them out loud. They know we're talking about them, but they avoid them. That's what bugs me about it, to no end. Whether it's true or not, the problem is you're never, ever going to know definitively. It just is. It's just part of life. You're just never going to know 100% who shot JFK, why the guy in Las Vegas was found in the way he was found with weapons strewn everywhere, like it was a Walmart, toy aisle. You know, you just never going to know these things. Why the Saudis were running around crazy that night in Las Vegas and all those people died. You know, you just never really going to know what happened. It's just part of life. I think this will be the same there. It doesn't really. At the end of the day, we just sort of run around like chickens with our head cut off. Low Key says FBI has the actual Discord chat with a good number of people being aware of planned assassination, yet FBI has not arrested these people. Well, at least they said that, though. They addressed that. They said, we're looking into all these people. We're tracking every lead down. Kash Patel said that. So hats off. He said that. So great. That's public. But there's still the BS filter on the whole gun down the pants routine. Bogus. Sorry, kid jumps off the roof. He bends both legs. You would have seen the jeans ripped, his leg broken, all of it. Was he carrying the barrel in the towel and that's what he dropped when he fell off the roof? Maybe that's what he picked up when he stood back up. Maybe. I don't know. But again, explain to me the whole takedown. It's not a takedown rifle if it's grandpa's rifle, which means you have to take that thing down and it takes minutes to do it, let alone the impact that's going to have. He had to put it back together upon that roof to make the shot at all. And now the scope's off, which I believe explains why it was a neck shot, not something else. But anyway, we're never going to know. You're just never going to know. CDM says, did Charlie ever take on trad Catholics? It would have been a very interesting exchange and useful. Well, I don't know if he ever took on trad Catholics, but I do remember the last time I actually thought about Charlie Kirk prior to his death, God rest his soul, was when he and Michael Knowles kind of got into a debate of sorts in front of a crowd over the church. Michael Knowles was talking to somebody, and I forget the exact words. I don't remember. I'd have to go look it up. I don't know it off the top of my head, but Michael Knowles talked about how the church, you go to the church, come to the church. He was talking to a student or whatever, and you need to come to the church. And Charlie Kirk corrected him like, oh, you missed an opportunity, Michael. No, go to Jesus. And then they started debating over it. And I thought, I was kind of disappointed in Michael Knowles for not standing up and being stronger with Charlie in response to that. Did you see that, Nicholas Cavazos? Do you remember that exchange?
No, I remember it, and the reality that was super uncomfortable for, I think, Michael Knowles, who I hold the utmost respect for, Michael Knowles. But I think this was probably an uncomfortable question for him, if I had to guess. And it's an uncomfortable question for a lot of us, was in that exchange where Michael is presenting all of these good arguments from the natural law, all these good arguments from divine revelation. All Charlie had to do to get him to back down was say the dreaded phrase, but what about Pope Francis? That's all he had to say. And that's all you have to say when it comes to, like, in some senses, taking the wind out of the stomach or taking the wind out of the sails of Catholic arguments. Because this is the thing. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. When we want fallen away family members to convert, oftentimes, who maybe are in evangelicalism or something like that, or when we're trying to get someone who's more conservative to become Catholic, they just need to say, well, I love all this argument about history and philosophy. It seems really beautiful. You guys got some pretty aesthetics. But this guy in white in Rome is saying stuff that sounds like Karl Marx. It sounds like Karl Marx. And he's saying stuff that I know is not in the Bible. And as an ex-evangelical, I can say what a lot of the things that Pope Francis says were not only not in the Bible, but were very anti-biblical in many ways. They were just very anti-biblical. And it's one thing to have that, but then when you also have this gaslighting machine on the opposite side that says, well, actually, no, it was perfectly in line with biblicalness and everything was fine. You must become Catholic because can't you just see Pope Francis is amazing? It's not convincing. And so as someone who was an evangelical like Charlie Kirk and is a Catholic now like Michael Knowles, I can say I genuinely understand why people don't become Catholic, because Pope Francis was a great stumbling block. And anybody who says that it was just a bunch of trads who are like making stuff up, they need to go and like re-examine their own situation in the subject, because like he was the greatest scandal, the greatest modern living scandal to the Catholic Church that I think we have seen in over 100 years. Because even with all of the issues with the sex scandals and the stuff like that, the amount of cover-up that he did, the amount of doctrinal confusion that he sowed, the amount of people that just left the faith entirely because of all of this. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, I know the Francis pontificate is over, but it's like we will all bear that scar for the rest of our lives.
Well, it's just like original
switching.
Protestants complaining about popes living in palaces. Like, yes, it's in that case, it's not having to do with their words contradicting aspects of the faith or the Bible, but it still is with their behavior apparently contradicting that, or with the popes and the pornocracy, any of these situations of corruption. It's like all you have to do is say, yeah, but what about the guy who's in charge? It takes the wind out of the sails. So even when you had a pope who wasn't, I think
Michael Knowles also has another log on that fire, and that is, of course, the elephant in the room, and that is the fact that he works for the Daily Wire, and then, of course, by extension, Israel. So he has to be somewhat cautious and careful, and I think he's made that choice. It's his professional choice to do that and to be there, and it is what it is. But I believe that explains some of his reluctance to go for the argument instead, sort of tap dancing around it. I definitely think Knowles is capable of making solid and great arguments. He's very smart. He's sharp as a tack. But I just remember being very disappointed in that exchange between him and Charlie, thinking, man, you had an opportunity, brother. Like, it was like you were there in front of this crowd. You could have planted yet another seed in Charlie's heart. I mean, I don't know. I was just remember feeling very disappointed in that. And the next time I thought about Charlie Kirk was after he was dead. So shame on me. Shame on me for doing that. I missed a good comment there. Darn it. Jacob says, even Knowles was a little soft on defending the church's position on who's in heaven during the Tucker interview. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that other than Daily Wire. I just don't.
I think there's something way more simple. I think there's something way more simple than the Daily Wire. I think that Michael Knowles, even though he goes to the TLM, it's very, very easy just to get inundated with the kind of conciliar soup that we're all swimming in. It's very, very easy because it doesn't demand much of you, and it oftentimes makes you more popular to the world. And so when asked about like the touchy questions about, no salvation outside the church, it's pretty easy to widen that door of the church, so much so that really the only one who's outside of it is old Hitler and Judas,
Low Key says Knowles doesn't work for Israel. Daily Wire is financed by Texas billionaires who are from Bush family side of conservatism.
Who work for Israel.
Like I said, he works for Israel. That's exactly what I said, Low Key. I mean, almost verbatim. That's what I mean. Who do you think sent the red heifers to Israel that they just
exactly. Offered? Those come from good old-fashioned Texas cattle farm.
I mean, they came from Texas.
I assume Low Key is tongue-in-cheek. He's like, of course. George Bush.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad we agree. I'm glad we totally agree on this one. Oh man. I tell you, it is. We live in interesting times. At least that much is true. I remember years ago, I've said this before many times, about my dad, who's not Catholic, who, was raised anti-Catholic, and he and I have had major warfare over our Christian faith because of his anti-Catholic upbringing. And he's obviously still a practicing Freemason, so keep that in mind as well. And I remember years ago, he called me one day, and I was at my previous radio apostolate. And he was like, "Your Pope, man, your Pope he says some crazy things." My dad does not speak with a Southern accent, by the way. I don't know why my inner voice is always a redneck, but nonetheless, your Pope's a crazy man. And I leaned into it and I said, "Dad, you have no idea how bad he is." And that changed the conversation completely. It was no more, like tit for tat, like debate. It was now inquisitive. What do you mean? Tell me more. Like, you know what I mean? So it's that technique works really well when it comes to debating non-Catholics who don't fully understand the Catholic faith. Like unfortunately, Catholicism is not just the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. It's also advanced Christianity. Protestantism is grade school stuff. It truly is grade school stuff. And they don't understand the deeper, more profound elements of typology and hierarchy that were present all the way back in Genesis 1. It's just lost to them. They don't get these things. So when you're having a conversation, especially someone who like confronts you on a whim, you have a lot to overcome in a very short amount of time. So changing the dynamics of the conversation to get it away from Bible tit for tat, warfare is, one of my recommendations. So that's why instead of avoiding the difficulty, just lean into it and go straight for it. Yeah, you're right. Francis, it was a crazy man, or is a crazy man. At the time it was, now it was. Which is why I am growing in at least the risk. Like, am I completely happy with Leo the 14th? No, I'm not. There are things that I'm very concerned about under the Leo pontificate. But I got to say, I absolutely love that we've come to something more calm and more normal. Something that feels more normal, more calm, more everyday, that the Pope should be doing and acting in this way, behaving in this way, carrying himself in this way. I am way more happy about that. But now I need to encourage him to go further. And I think that's the trick, is we have to encourage him as much as possible as we are able to go further, to stop being like the other day, the quoting of the Jewish text and the reference to the Talmud or whatever it is, the Islamic text. It was like, I'm going to throw up in my mouth, Your Holiness, please just avoid this. Okay. Just avoid it. Just don't say anything one way or the other. And we're good. We're good. Like, you don't need to go there.
This is why we needed Dolan as a pope, because he's a New Yorker and New Yorkers are direct. The problem is that you're trying to ask a Midwesterner to be blunt, and it's just, I'm afraid that's highly unlikely.
He could have just not said anything and he would have been fine. He didn't need to be blunt. He could have just not mentioned these other texts. Nobody would have been the wiser.
I'm talking about other statements, but yes.
Yeah, you're right. I would love to see a blunt but yet orthodox blunt
coming out there.
100%. I would love to see that. But I'd be I could live
Pope
with a guy who is polite and just doesn't say crazy things like quoting Jewish texts. It'd be better. 100%. No question.
Yeah,
Antonia, good morning to you.
Yeah, no, it reminds me very much so of Kennedy Hall's book. If you guys have read his last work, which is called, What Happened to Catholicism. It's a fantastic work people should check out. But I think that what he does in this book is he actually kind of explains both the reason why so many Catholics are confused, and the reason also why, even under the Pope Leo pontificate, though things have simmered down in the sensational realm, it's going to continue to be confusing. And I think it's just because Catholics do not want to address this real uncomfortable question, which is, was neo-modernism really introduced into the lifeblood of the church in the 1960s? Was it or was it not? And I think that for so many Catholics out there who grew up under, John Paul II and Benedict and with EWTN and all of those things, you had a very, hunky-dory version of the church portrayed toward you, when in reality, the stuff that Pope Leo says is not really any different for the most part than what, like, John Paul II said. Like, John Paul II was quoting Quranic verses all the time. He famously kissed the
and I wish he had never done those things.
Yeah, it's like John Paul II. He financed the first ever in in almost a millennia, the first ever synagogue in the city of Rome. There's all this stuff that's very easy to find out if you look with unfiltered glasses.
I know,
and that's the hard reality of it all, And so that's why I keep joking, but that was right.
I remember having a phone call conversation with Dr. Taylor Marshall. again, this was probably right after this, like 2018. This was probably like 2018. And he and I were talking about this privately on the phone about JP2 and our rush to canonize him. And it's something basically we're like, he was definitely further along this journey than I was, 100%. But I was sort of waking up to like, oh my heavens, you cannot just go along to get along. You can't just go for the ride and not worry about it so much. You have to be paying attention, because I wanted to believe the best of JP2 for sure. And then, but the reality was like, holy smokes, we rush these canonizations. They need to take a lot more time. We want to eulogize people and think of only the best things that people have ever done. We never want to focus on the negative stuff, but that's worse when you're trying to canonize somebody. You need to work through that. There needs to be a lot of time, separation from the actual events that have taken place. Time needs to separate that so that you can have, a real clear view of their life. And then the church needs to make a decision. It's really calling into question the process of canonization for a lot of people. I think over the last, and I think Jake's made this point in the past. Maybe it's always been this case. Maybe it's always been true, at least for the last 1,000 years. That may have been true, that the canonization process is about politics and money and influence. Like, who do you know and how much money can you get to
not always, but often.
Your gal through the process. I definitely feel like it's true for the last maybe the last 100 years. I definitely feel like it's true there. But is it how much further back? I don't know. But it definitely feels
there were absolutely many occasions where basically it was which country had influence in the papal court, and that could prevent a candidate for sainthood that had a total cultus in his homeland, but it was a rival nation of some kind.
The Galpro is my
this happened all the time.
Example.
Yeah, this happened all the time throughout history, and it's still happening today basically.
Why are we talking about deer bacon in the chat? You guys are going to make me hungry. Don't do that. Okay, listen. I was filming a walk and talk video yesterday through the woods in the back of the neighborhood over there, and I'm seeing nothing but fresh sign. Okay, fresh scat. There were rubs. Okay, scrapes, and I can't hunt back there. There was hog sign. I'm like, this is basically the butcher shop back there. All I got to do is walk back there, and I should be able to bring home a freezer full of meat. That's what I meant to say. But I'm not allowed to hunt back there. It's a tragedy. So now you guys are making me hungry.
Where the homeless people live in the woods. That's what Joe's talking about, because he lives in Houston. I didn't
see any homeless people back there. There's an alligator back there too, by the way.
Yo, why don't you move from Houston? I
want to badly.
Let's start a GoFundMe. Let's get you out of Houston.
You can't afford anything. You have to be one of these Jewish pro-Israel Texas billionaires to afford Texas.
Well,
yeah,
it's that crazy expensive.
Maybe you can't live in Texas, but what you could do, if I ever move up to St. Mary's, Kansas, you can come up. We'll build a studio. You can have your show in the morning. I'll have my other room so I can do all of my shows. And there you go. You have a whole Catholic town to be in. Mm-hmm. And Joe will probably still go to the Nova Sordo because he's scrupulous about the SPX. But
Nova Sordo, I go to the fraternity, brother. I'm Catholic and trad. So
I'm Catholic and trad.
Of course.
Those are two separate things, remember?
Yeah. Yeah. They're two separate things. Well, I guess this, when it came to JP2, it reminded me of this question that I always pose to myself, and it's kind of a blackpilling question, but I'll pose it to you guys. What is according to Pius XII and memorial tradition, what is the 3 requirements to be considered Catholic? What are the 3 things that you have to do in order to be Catholic? This is Catechesis 101, by the way.
There's the precepts of the church. You have to maintain the precepts of the church. You have to become baptized into the church, obviously, then therefore confirmed. You have to maintain the precepts of the church. Well, is this a trick question?
No. This is a Baltimore Catechism question. It's so the 3 things to be considered Catholic are one you got right. You have to be baptized, and you can have the sacraments in your life in some form, right? The sacraments of the church, because you could be an infant who dies early. 2, you have to hold on to all that the church has taught in faith and morals. And then thirdly, you have to recognize the Roman pontiff and the bishops and communion with him. That's the threefold order of what makes a Catholic. But here's my question. Mm-hmm. When we look at polls and it says that 95% of American Catholics know what the church teaches on contraception and uses contraception anyway and thinks that the church is wrong, that means that on a practical statistical level, 95% of Americans who claim to be Catholic are in fact not Catholic at all.
Right.
When you look at that massive amount of deviation, which you could also apply worldwide, as an example, in France, only 7% of Catholics believe in hell in France. And so it's pretty bad.
93% find out the hard way.
Yeah, they find out the hard way. But it's like when you see this statistical worldwide, like absolute crater that the crisis has caused, this is where individuals like John Paul II really kind of come into question, and individuals like Archbishop Lefebvre really start to shine, because you're like, okay, yeah, this kind of hunky-dory world that I've lived in does not add up when it comes to math. It just does not work.
Agreed. KW says, Joe, you can go to TLM in Maple Hill, Kansas, not far from St. Mary's. Yeah, I actually do keep an eye on the real estate there in Kansas. I keep an eye to see someplace between Maple Hill and St. Mary's to see what land and housing costs, to see if there's an opportunity there. Yeah, of course. Joe. If you lived up there and you were like, I'm going to go to this really small chapel instead of this massive Roman basilica, because I will visit. I will do you the favor of gracing, you with my presence on rare occasion. I might even don the beard again, just to be more trad, so that I can, qualify.
I will come to your house and shave off your beard and your mustache, and then you'll look like you're 10 again. And then I will chastise you and scold you for being like, look, massive Roman basilica, nah, because canonical mumbo jumbo. Small little chapel in a cornfield, yes, 100%, I like this.
I would like it. Yeah, we're fraternity people. We love.
I'd prefer a chapel in the woods. I want a proper old wooden
it's
wooden
not
chapel.
About scrupulosity. We actually like the fraternity. We love the community that we have experienced everywhere we've been to the fraternity.
I love the fraternity. They're great people, some of the best people. It's kind of like Trump said. That there's murderers and there's rapists, but I'm sure there's great people when it comes to the fraternity.
Wow, no animosity on your part at all. I can tell.
I'm just kidding.
There's zero bitterness there.
My only issue with the Ecclesia Dei communities is like on a pastoral level and like in their personal churches, they're really based because they'll talk about like the issues in the church. But then like as an organization, they never said one thing ever about anything that Pope Francis did until Traditionis Custodes came out, and they were like, please, let us remain in our ghetto to say our mass. And it's like, goodness gracious, man, what is going on here? That's my only criticism, essentially.
It's your only one, huh?
Yeah, they were too rebellious. I agree.
My only one.
Yeah,
I agree.
They were too rebellious.
Yes.
Well, like you said, you still have to recognize the Pope to be Catholic.
Against their persecution.
I guess that excludes the Spixers, right? Darn it to bits. Dama Catholica says, you look 20 years younger. Me or Nicholas? Me. Praise be to God for that. That's Nicholas still looks 10, so enjoy it while you can, because it's going to come to an end.
I actually thought about shaving off everything this morning to come on here just to mess with you. It would have been so funny. You would have been like, who is this guy talking to me? You're in Nick's room, but you're not Nick.
I want to see all men shave just to be in solidarity. As Francis would say,
dare we hope that all men be shaved?
Yes, exactly. Dare we hope.
Get out of here.
Phoebe says, I'm offended, Nick. I like my ghetto. I do too, Phoebe, by the way. I do too.
If you can't be put into a ghetto, then you're just not Catholic.
We're very
That's how
blessed.
Authority works.
We're very blessed where I live to be able to have our fraternity parish. It's been a wonderful community. We absolutely love our priests too. There is an SSPX chapel in the Houston area, but unfortunately it's 17 hours south of us, practically speaking, on the almost in the Gulf of America. It's practically like if it sneezes hard enough, it's going for a swim. Like that's how far down it is. So it's like not practical to visit at all. I've only ever been there one time. That was for a funeral mass, like 18 years ago. That's why you got to get out of Houston.
You got to get out of Houston, man. 17 hours.
St. Mary's. No, it's like you think about like opportunities. Like if you really want to hedge your traditional bet, Kansas is a great option. You do have the SSPX, massive, beautiful church at St. Mary's, and you also have the fraternity. And honestly, those communities do interact with each other. They do mix. Despite Nicholas Cavazos' bitter hatred towards fraternity, his bigoted animosity towards them, from what we're hearing from friends up there, they get along very well. They hang out all the time. Praise be to God. But so you got that opportunity. That doubles your opportunity to go to trad mass if you live in that area, Topeka, Kansas-ish area. But then if you like Oklahoma, right? If you live anywhere near Clear Creek, like let's say you live what highway is that? I forget what highway that is. That goes from Arkansas, from the Bentonville over to Tulsa, whatever that highway is. If you live along that highway, you have now like 4 opportunities to go to a traditional Latin mass. You've got Arkansas's fraternity parish. You got the Benedictines at Clear Creek that say that their version of a TLM, it's slightly altered TLM. It's TLM-ish mostly, like 98%. And then you do have a fraternity at Tulsa, and I think they've done away with the diocesan one there, which is a tragedy. But
they've done away with it, yeah.
But you have options.
Actually, interestingly enough, in our new bishop in Austin, Bishop Garcia, his last edict from his old diocese in Monterey, California, was to get rid of the one last existing TLM community that had been there, I think, 17 years, right? And so he's now our new bishop. And so what's good? And so I'm like, we're all expecting for our TLMs to get canceled, which means we'll all be at the SSPX. But what's so interesting, and this is kind of brings up my old point earlier, is that like, as an evangelical, I grew up in the same town, went to the same church for 21 years of my life, and had community. As the last 6 years of being Catholic, I've had the cathedral in Austin, which was this glorious parish, 700 families shut down by a Roman bureaucrat. And now we're about to have all of the other TLM shut down. And it's like, all right, here's the real tough issue about why Catholics in America don't want to donate to Rome. It's because you shut everything down and you give all the money to illegal aliens. That's the hard truth. And so that's why we don't respect you. I'm sorry. You want respect? You have to earn it.
Tradish Mom says, see how you had to explain how you were Catholic and trad? If you had the beard, there would be no question.
Got a point there, Joe.
Ouch.
And you know who else has a point is a fellow Jacob. So, of course, he's correct.
Of course, yeah.
He's talking about the tragedy, the real tragedy of the SSPX, which is that they use the transitional missile. And that is true. That is the real real issue.
62? They use the 62, right?
1962, the transitional missile.
Yeah, transitional.
The 1962 is the transitional missile.
So they're not trad enough. That's what you're saying.
That's the real transitional missile. Just like St. Pius X was the first modernist pope. The 1962 is the
awkward.
The real transitional missile.
In other words, to translate that into real people talk for you, Joe, what this means is these are the people who are like, yeah, in fact, we hate Nick Cavazos because he loves Donald Trump too much. And in fact, America is a free Masonic dish rag nation. And unless
it's true, Nick. Stop avoiding it. It's true. America is the dish rag of the Freemasons.
America is the great Satan, but it's our great Satan.
It's
our great Satan.
So look, I will personally buy both of you two passes to go live in Poland, and at least Jake will be happy.
I'll be happy.
I don't want to live in Poland.
My fiance will be even happier.
Way too close to Vlad. I don't want to go live over there.
We'll just get invaded. Poland has no natural defenses.
None. Zero. Zilch. None.
I know they happen to have defenses from somebody else, but yeah, I don't know. Like the transitional missile, like I get the whole pre-55 thing. I like pre-55 Holy Week, but it's one of those niche trad issues that I'm just like, look, guys, hate to break it to you, but the pre-55 missile is never probably going to be the universal missile of the church again, and so it is what it is. Unfortunately,
I actually don't think so. I think that basically, if restoration of any tradition continues, then it will follow the trajectory of actually restoring tradition instead of modernist innovations like the 1962, 1955 Holy Week. Like, I think that's the path it will follow. And actually, something like Traditionis Custodes, when that comes out and people no longer feel this pressure to, let's just not cause a fuss. Let's stick with the 62. Let's not, cause any, issues here. Like you're just sticking to whatever causes the least amount of controversy and questions. Now that it's kind of a free for all, where it's like, well, if you've got tacit permission, no one's actually caring, and if you don't have permission and you're doing it anyway, like no one's really caring, like that sort of thing. I think Traditionis Custodes, among other things, has actually been one of the greatest boons to the restoration of the actual traditional, Mass, the actual traditional Holy Week, all of that. It's built trad
parishes all over.
Yeah, it's just kind of helped expand this mindset of, look, if they're going to, if there's no more line that we have to toe because we're going to get persecuted anyway, we might as well go all out in restoring the actual ancient practices of the church, which is the pre-55 Holy Week. So I completely disagree. I think if there is a tendency, if the world doesn't end in a couple of years when the Great Monarch comes or whatever like that, if there's a general overall tendency towards restoring tradition, then it will follow a trajectory of restoring more tradition, not stopping at this point where, well, this is where we kind of have a cutoff.
So you're saying you're feeling like 62 is arbitrary?
62, it's kind of, I don't want to say arbitrary because I understand the mindset. It's not that I don't understand, where they're coming from. I understand the mindset of, here is the last sort of, what's the phrase? Here's the last publication of a missal before the council ended or before the Novus Ordo or whatever like that. The last, I'm forgetting the term for it, but I understand that.
The term the society uses, you got part of it right. It's the last Tridentine Missal, but it's the last missal specifically with papal approval that doesn't have the doctrinal dangers in it.
Right.
Sure. And so I understand that thought process, but it's still wrong because it contains a Holy Week that the reformers who were responsible for the Novus Ordo said was the battering ram of liturgical change. You can't escape that. It's literally what the modernists knew would lead to the Novus Ordo.
I personally want to go back to the
ripping apart Holy
liturgy
Week.
of St. Justin the Martyr.
There's no
That's
logic.
The one I think we ought to go to.
Oh, sure, yeah,
that's
fine.
That would be the real trad way.
I just want to go back to the medieval free for all before Trent came and ruined everything.
I want the Celtic liturgy.
Yeah, the Eastern Catholics keep telling all of us that all of our liturgies are just fabrications, and so we need to go to their modern Eastern Rite, which has in fact been reformed a zillion and one times.
Yeah, exactly. The Tridentine Mass, in your average Mass from the 1962 Missal, is probably older and more directly traceable to an older origin than most of the Eastern rites. As much as I love and respect the Eastern Apostolic
Why do you guys
rites.
hate the Easterners? Well, that's what I just heard. I heard I loathe.
I think we should all be. I think we should all be Anglican Ordinariate. How about that?
I hate everybody.
Why do you open the can of worms, man? You're gonna get me in trouble. We have friends that
I love and respect the Anglican Ordinariate. I just think they need to go to the Serum use. They need to go back to the Serum use.
I 100% agree, though. I think that's
I said, there are some very fine people.
Yeah, very
fine
people.
Look at him prefacing his next comment with, "There's good people on both sides of that question. Some of them are dirtbags." Yeah.
Well, it's true, honestly, but I think the realistic restoration of tradition. So about the Holy Week in specific, that part I agree with you, Jake. Mm-hmm. I was referring to more so the pre-55 Missal as a whole unit, if you will. But I think the more likely outcome of this whole thing is some type of Missal in the future. Let's just call it the 2100 Missal for just sake of example. And it's going to be, if it is anything like the Tridentine Missal, it will be the Tridentine Missal, probably plus at least a handful of the new saints and a lot of options for vernacular. It wouldn't surprise me if a good middle ground in the future is, okay, you have the Tridentine Missal, but you can do all of it in English or all of it in Latin let's have some of the new saints come over and let's let that be done.
Well, actually,
that wouldn't.
Actually, back right before, one of the key motivating factors for Traditionis Custodes is that parts of Rome were treating the Tridentine Missal as an ongoing living liturgical rite of the church, and they published guidelines for how to celebrate pretty much any of the newly canonized saints in the traditional calendar, in the traditional mass, so that you could have a TLM on the feast of St. Padre Pio. And you could have a TLM, it would take from the common of a confessor and just plug his name in. So it wasn't, there were no new proper masses promulgated, but it was treating it as if it was alive. Yeah. And it was basically treating it as if, in the vein of Summorum Pontificum, as if there were two forms of the Roman rite, coexisting and mutually enriching, or whatever the word they use.
How's it go?
They use. Mutually enriching in a spirit of synodality. But anyway, the point was that was a motivating factor for those who hated the TLM to say, no, we need to put this document out to cut this down again.
I don't know. Don't you think there needs to be a death match? One of these needs to win, the other one needs to die.
Well, there will be a death match. It's called All the Modernists Are Old, and death is coming. And so, but
wow, why do you look at me when you say that, Nicholas Cavazos?
Because you shaved,
in
Joe.
your eye, buddy. I saw that look in your eye. Get off my lawn, you young punk. Okay.
You're clearly trying to de-age, and it's working for you. You have a great first step, but yeah, I mean, if you think of people like Cardinal Roche as an example, this is the thing that just drives me crazy about Catholics. Cardinal Roche has openly stated that the problem with the Latin Mass is that it no longer reflects the ecclesiology of the Church. To put that in layman's terms for everybody, the traditional Latin Mass no longer reflects the theology of the Catholic Church anymore in a certain context, and so therefore needs to be replaced. Okay, that is rank modernism, but he's allowed to be there. He's allowed to stay in, right? Nothing's been done about this. Now, obviously, it's a Roman authority that has to get rid of him, but the fact that the trads and us are so small and so weak that we didn't even have a slight block at the last conclave, like a slight voting block that could actually try to do some type of pressure.
Burke is a block all by himself. Have you seen the shape of him? I mean, he's
a
pretty
very
blocky.
square man.
He's a very square guy.
He's literally a block. But it's like it's just it's so it's pathetic, man. It's pathetic. That's why I've talked about on my show, like launching a Reconquista, like Redeemed Zoomer is doing for the Protestant denominations. I've thought about doing that, where we as lay people band together and start demanding individual dioceses to put out Cardinal Burke's Statement of Truths. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this document, but it's basically like it's almost like a modern syllabus of errors, and it condemns a lot of the modern errors that we've seen over the last 60 years. And we can actually approach our bishops and ask them to impose this upon all the clergy and faithful of a diocese under condition of anathema. Like, they have that power to do as the local bishop. The problem is that the local bishops at the moment are so interested right now in things like, guys, we need to feed the poor. Wink, wink. Let me take your money and send it down to Mexico. And so, yeah, it's a major issue. That's why I'm totally in Trump's camp. I'm like, Trump, prosecute the USCCB, go after these guys, because goodness gracious, it is a
never
nightmare.
going to happen.
It's like,
never going to happen.
The USCCB, man, it's right up there with freaking, all of these cartels and all of the stuff going on here. This is nuts.
By the way, before we run out of time today, I hate to change the subject on you guys, but we are going to run out of time here. Padre Pio and You is a brand new book out by Sophia Institute Press. Mary O'Regan. She's been on the show in the past. I was interviewing her while she was doing all her research on Padre Pio, and she was addressing a lot of things that most Padre Pio books weren't addressing. So there's a lot of things that about him that have been myths and misconceptions or whatever. She deals with that in the book. But one of the things she also deals with in the book is Padre Pio's persecution. Something I've talked about a number of times. Padre Pio was persecuted by the Lavender Mafia in the hierarchy of the church. And they had very powerful friends, even at the Vatican. So there was conversation earlier in the Telegram group, was Padre Pio persecuted by the Catholic Church? Well, I think it's semantics, to be honest with you. I think there's members of the hierarchy who leveraged their power and position nefariously to persecute a good man. And so they leveraged the bureaucracy of the church to get that done. But eventually it was the Pope himself who freed him from that persecution, at least to some degree. He would never go on to continue to write or have like letter exchanges with his spiritual directees. Like that ended. There's volumes of those letters. You can read them for yourselves. They're fantastic insights. Just his letters to his spiritual directors, I thought were fantastic to read when he was a young priest. I mean, really, really incredible. He would, he would complain sometimes. Like the great mystic saint did actually complain. He was very much human. He very much suffered from the concupiscent nature like the rest of us. Only he didn't do the same things that the rest of us did. So anyway, I would encourage you to check out this book by Mary O'Regan. She's a Californian, so it's hard to get her out of bed that early in the morning to have the conversation with her. But you should check it out. I think it'd be very, very good. Praise be to God in all things. Padre Pio, by the way, was one of the first to admit that he was obedient to a fault. Padre Pio personally recognized the differences between his obedience and the call to obedience by a layperson. Like they aren't the same. I don't know why everybody conflates these things when it comes to like issues in the church. Oh, Padre Pio was obedient, so we have to be too. Padre Pio gave a vow of obedience, and he personally considered, it was his personal choice, that in that vow that he made, that he would consider his superiors to be the penultimate, authority in his life. Whatever they asked him to do, he was going to go do. He made that decision. Like it didn't matter, right, wrong, indifferent. He didn't care. He was just going to do whatever they wanted him to do. And he was just going to be obedient to a fault. Now, I think he did draw a line ultimately when they tried to take the money that he was raising to build a hospital. They tried to take some of that, filter it away into the order to overcome some bad financial decisions. And I think he did not allow for that to happen. So I think he drew a line at that point because he's like, the donations came for the hospital. That's the only reason why they're ever going to be used. No other reason, even though there was an effort to take them. But beyond that, they told him to shut up. He shut up. He had spiritual directees who weren't so obedient. They could not stand the injustice perpetuated against Padre Pio. And so they dug up the dirt on the Lavender Mafia, this archbishop, priest in particular there in Italy, who had such jealousy and whatnot for Padre Pio, that they dug up the story and they tried to make it public. They wrote a book. They published it. The Vatican Holy Office bought every copy, and you never saw the light of day. They went directly to the publisher and bought every copy. Never came out.
Interesting.
They also held a press conference in Geneva. They were going to tell the press they were going to show where all of the bones were buried, until the superiors of Padre Pio forced Padre Pio to call them on the phone that very day and say, "Nope, shut this off. You're not doing it." And they obeyed because Padre asked them to. And so God's holy will be done in all things. But I just wanted to point out that there are distinctions made, even in Padre Pio's mind, about obedience. He did not think that you and I have the same level of obedience that he had as someone who gave his life completely over to his superiors in a vow of obedience. We don't have that. So we have to obey God. We have to be faithful to our state in life, to the good, the true, and the beautiful, and we should never participate in that which is, harmful to Holy Mother Church. We can't just go along to get along, and we live in the age of Pope-splainers. So I just wanted to make all of that as before we go today. So, Antonia, what do you laugh? Don't be laughing at me.
No, it's just funny to see this show going full SSPX.
It is not. I am total fraternity.
Meanwhile, Nick's over here endorsing synodality.
I've got the tattoo.
Nick's over here. Nick wants all the trads to synodally get together and synodally walk together to a place where they can synodally make their voices heard and synodally force the clerical monarchy of the church to do the will of the people instead of following the church hierarchy. No, I get it. This is great. We're finally immanentizing what Pope Francis wanted for the church. This is great.
Oof. I'm gonna make Jake real.
Well, roll the music, Jake. We're gonna self-destruct if we keep going down this road.
I thought about this yesterday as I was walking through the parking lot of a store. I thought, Pope Francis, he sometimes makes me say to myself, did the Enlightenment have a point? I don't know, because he was literally that bad. And so I'm just in with that.
Did the Enlightenment have a point? That's great.
Well, in the famous words of Father Relaya, you're going to hell.
You're going to hell. We're all going to hell.
You're going to hell, and you're going to hell, and you're going to hell. All of you going to hell. It's Father Relaya.
That's a pretty good impression. I have a promo of his playing on the radio right now, and it sounds exactly.
He no longer has a beard, though, so he can't portray him as accurately as he could a week ago. So
I got to grow my beard back.
I want the old school Joe McClane back.
I have as great a beard as Jake does now. Praise be to God.
Yeah, exactly.
So even better.
Joe's showing off the little dimple in the chin. Very,
I literally have
Cary Granted
beard of this show right now, which is saying something. So
maybe when I get back from the honeymoon, I'll grow the mustache out for fun.
You're going to grow your beard out as the honeymoon, aren't you? You're not going to shave one single time on honeymoon.
No,
your wife's going to be like, wait a second. We didn't talk about this prior to marriage.
Be nice and clean for honeymoon. But I might do the stash. Maybe I'll do the stash for November.
Antonia, no, I don't live in River Oaks. I'd have to have like Nick Cavazos kind of cash. He's the guy on Pelican, not me. I can't afford to live in River Oaks. Are you kidding me? Like if I went to the river, last time I was in River Oaks, I got pulled over. They didn't ask for my license. They asked for my asset statement. Like, okay, I'm going to need to see your total assets, sir. Like you're not allowed to be in this part of the neighborhood without at least a cool $1 million in liquidity in your bank account. The River Oaks is pretty fancy schmancy. I live way up. I live in South Dallas, is what we say here in Houston. I live in the north.
We've got a voice of authority speaking in the chat. Magnificat Scriptorium says, "New Joe, like new Coke, is a disastrous development."
So true.
Joe, this is someone who is fit to tie your sandals, so
because he made them.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Joe lives in Bunker Hill. That's another neighborhood I'm not allowed to be in. My kind tain't welcome there, unless it's to park their cars. They will let me there if they need their cars parked. Then I'm the guy for that job. Adam, good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out. Napoleon, thanks for being on the team today. Christine, OFS, what would Kennedy Hall say? I don't know. What would Kennedy Hall? He would probably tell me to grow the beard back. He'd probably won't come back on the show until I've grown my beard back.
He's on a beard strike.
He's on a total beard strike. Hey, I wanted to make Nicholas Cavazos dime out all of the future plans that he's hinted at. We've run out of time. Jake is kicking us off. Yeah. So you got away clean on this one, Nick. You're so lucky. You got away.
We always go long when Nick's on.
I was going to force you to tell us all the hidden secrets about your future plans, but what can I do?
Have me back on. I'll be happy to talk about it.
I work for Jake. That's the way it goes. God love you all. See you tomorrow.